What's going on, you guys? TBR here, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another King of Fighters All-Star video. But more importantly, happy Saturday, you guys, and you know what that means. It's time for the Saturday Chat and Chill, where we kick back, relax, and talk about one topic in the King of Fighters All-Star community for about 10 to 15 minutes. It depends on how much I can ramble. But before we get into all of that, make sure if you guys haven't already done so, you smash that like button and subscribe. In today's video, we are going to be talking more in depth about the latest update. Being that this was the first update of 2022, I feel like there's several things with this update that are worth discussing ever since we did that breakdown video, now that the dust is settled and it's been a couple of days. And I definitely think that there might be some pretty good news in some of this stuff that might bode well for the rest of 2022. If this is going to be the direction that Netmarble decides to go in this year, time will tell, but we're going to talk about it. So without further ado, you guys, let's go ahead and get into the video. Alright, you guys, welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the Saturday Chat and Chill. Like I said in the introduction, in this week's installment, we are going to be talking more in depth about the first big update of 2022, the January update, as it were. And we've talked about this, we've broken this update down this week. However, of course, that was on the first day of release, so there were several different details and things of that nature that we hadn't had a chance to really look at or talk about even, and I'll kind of get into that here in the introduction. But also, there are several things that now that we've had time to digest this update, I wanted to kind of go ahead and talk about. So the first thing I want to talk about is something we haven't actually talked about here on the channel quite yet, and that's the fact that they did go ahead and release the Korean PC port over on the Korean side of the game in a beta phase. Now, when it comes to that, there is a website where you can download it for the Korean side of the game. It is, like I mentioned, in a beta phase. Now, before the global players get up in arms and get all upset about this, do bear in mind that one, it is in a beta phase, and two, it definitely seems like it feels like it's in a beta phase, because from what I've heard, it is not necessarily the most stable thing in the world right now. Now, the things that I've heard reports of are a lot of input lag, definitely some crashes and things of that nature. However, there are some positives as well. It seems like the slow-mo bugs and things like that are not present there, at least for the most part. So that is positive news. However, there are going to be several kinks it seems like they need to work out from that beta before they're going to be able to get into or consider any sort of global launch for the PC port. So we had theorized and wondered about how far along this PC port was, and it seems like that is going to be pretty indicative of where it's at right now. Right now, it doesn't seem like it is very close. It seems like there's definitely some kinks they need to work out. So I'm hoping that they can get that out to us over the course of the next month or two, but it does seem like there are going to be still some things they need to work out before that can happen. So I just wanted to go ahead and briefly mention that before we get into today's video. Now, of course, the PC port cannot come soon enough. This is something we all really desperately want, and I definitely on my side would prefer to be playing on the PC port and be in a stable environment. So I would rather just wait for them to work out any kinks or bugs before they decide to just let us quality analysis it. But really, at the end of the day, I would rather be playing on that than Moo Player, which, yeah, if you guys couldn't tell from my poll video yesterday, which if you haven't seen that, link will be in the description. Yeah, Moo Player isn't necessarily the most stable thing in the world sometimes, so, you know, it is what it is. I can't wait for it myself, but I am willing to be patient, just so long as that means that it's going to release and not have as many problems. So, with that being said, I just kind of wanted to go ahead and touch on that because I know that a lot of us hadn't brought that up, hadn't talked about that, and I hadn't seen many people talking about it. So I just wanted to go ahead and make sure you guys were aware of that. Now, when it comes to anything else with this update, like I said, this is the first big update of 2022, and I do feel like there's several things in here that we can take away from this that hopefully mean that Netmarble is going to be continuing down the road. So I want to go ahead and talk about what those are. So one big thing that I definitely want to talk about here is going to be some of these events that come out with these limited banners, right? So whenever they released that last Boss Syndrome volume at the end of 2021, we had gotten a tower as well as a time attack challenge for it, And that is something that we see coming back with this latest SS banner. Now, I had done a Saturday Chat and Chill just like this a few weeks ago, in which I had pretty much said that I was really worried about content in the game, and there were certain things that I was hoping that they would do going into 2022. And one of the things that I outlined in that video was that I wanted to see them bring these towers back with these limited banners more often, or even give us a monthly tower, and that seems like what we might be in for in 2022. Now, of course, we can only go on this update and the previous one, but if logic would dictate that history would repeat itself with the way Netmarble likes to do things, they tend to set a precedent and then kind of just keep regurgitating the same things over and over again, for good, better or for worse. Well, it does seem like that this might end up being a sign that we might be seeing that happen, and I think if that is a reality, then that is a very good thing for the game. Now, a lot of people had levied the criticism at Netmarble when it came to these towers or these time attack missions or what have you, that, hey, we can't even play them if we don't have new characters. They're trying to force us to pull these new characters. And that is probably true. However, one thing that they definitely did with this update that they did not do necessarily with that previous one that I think makes a huge difference is going to be the fact that they went ahead and they started giving us these tickets for logging in on that push login event. Now, those tickets, while they might not seem like much to some, that is basically, as we've already covered, going to equate over the course of a week. It's going to equate to 40 multis, or 40 summons rather, 4 multis for the fighters and 3 multis or 30 summons for the cards. And I do feel like the reason why they did this is because they realized if they're going to be releasing a tower and a time attack that is going to be locked until you get these new characters, that they're going to have to give us further assistance in being able to acquire these things, and I do think that that is a really good start. I don't necessarily know if that's going to solve the whole issue at this point one way or the other, but I haven't heard a lot of complaints, so in my opinion this was a really solid decision. And going forward in 2022, if this is going to be kind of what we're in for with some of these limited banner updates, I do think that this bodes really, really well, especially if they continue to get it to the point where really all you need is an Awakening level 1 version of one of these characters. I think that we're going to be in okay shape with this. You know, it'll be something we'll have to track and we'll have to keep an eye on, and of course you can't please everybody. You pretty much just have to hope you can please the majority, and honestly, when it comes to this, I do think that the majority of people are pretty happy with this stuff, so I'm really hoping that this is a trend going into 2022, despite the fact that, you know, last year we criticized them quite a bit for lack of content. I think that we can all agree that these two types of things, especially the rubies we're going to be seeing with these time attack missions, it is so clutch. So I'm really hoping that this is something they continue to do. Now, another thing that we saw with this update that is really positive and could be a good indicator of things to come is going to be this battle pass, this $50 battle pass, the whale battle pass. We talked about this in yesterday's video. If you guys want to watch that, link will be in the description. But when it comes to this battle pass, we had complained, bitched, moaned, whatever you want to call it, about the fact that they didn't theme these battle passes around these limited banners. Well, lo and behold, this time around they decided that they were finally going to listen, and of course we talked about this yesterday, but we have this BS or SS memory selector here, and I really hope that going into the rest of the year this is something they continue to do. But also I want to point out, I think they can continue to build on this formula. So really with these things, I think that what they really need to do is they need to continue to kind of tinker with this. You know, obviously I think that they're getting to a point where they're getting the value to where it needs to be. I think that there's a ton of value on this. However, you know, I think that there's definitely some work that can be done on the dolphin one. So this one here, heck, I'd even call this a minnow package. But I do think that there's work that could be done here. So whenever it comes to theming this, there's really nothing here that would be themed around the latest banner. And so I think that that's something they could improve on. I think they could work on maybe doing a little bit of something for those packages. But also, when it comes to this, I would really like to see them make this up to date, meaning that this would, instead of what the pool is now, also include whatever the current banner is, so we could get a memory for, like, say for instance, Terry or Mary in here. I think that that's something they could definitely improve on, because I do think if they did that, that just based solely upon the fact that people are hype at the time whenever this is out for whatever that banner is, that they'd probably move more of these, but it would also be really good for us, the consumer, because at that point we would also be able to acquire a memory for that character if we wanted to go ahead and decide to pick up that pass. So that's just one little thing that I wanted to point out. This is a really good step in the right direction, but I do think that there's more that they could do here, and I'm really hoping that that ends up being the case. Now, another thing I want to talk about here is actually going to be as it pertains to the Guild Boss Challenge. So, when it comes to the Guild Boss Challenge, this is the first new game mode that we've had in a while, and I'm enjoying it. You know, it is very interesting, and honestly, you guys, the most fun that I ever have with new content is kind of just brainstorming ideas and strategies that once you get a new content, of course, everybody kind of is trying to figure out what to do, how to do it, the best, most optimal way to play it. And that seems to be my favorite part of playing these new game modes, is just kind of brainstorming with people, play testing things, trying to figure out new and interesting ways to exploit characters against some of these modes. And I do think that this mode, while it can get a little choppy at times, which you could say that about almost any game mode at this point, to be honest with you, you know, it gets a little bit slow here and there. I will say that I do think that this game mode is in a pretty positive spot, mainly because of the way it's structured. It doesn't take a ton of time. It's nowhere near like it is with Guild Raid, where it takes, you know, 5, 6, 7 minutes to get through it. You know, it usually only takes a minute or two to get through this thing and you're done with it for the day. And they even gave us a practice mode for it. Now, one thing I will say, this practice mode, I would love to see them add practice mode to Guild Raid, just so that it would make it a little bit less, there would take a little bit less room for error out, or take more of the room for error out with that, because whenever you're trying to play test things, or you're trying to kind of just chase scores and things like that, you're constantly having to pay attention to whether or not the clock is about to run out so you don't use a key on accident. So I think that it would be really cool if they would add this practice feature to Guild Raid. That's one little kind of quality of life thing I'd like to see them do. You know, it would mainly probably help those of us who are constantly trying to get footage or play test things or things of that nature, but I do also think it would have positive benefits for everybody. So that's one little thing I just wanted to throw in here. But, you know, being the fact that we started out 2022 with new content, that's a really positive sign. And if they wanted to continue to build on this, release new versions of these bosses and kind of continue this trend, I'd be totally down for it, because I have been enjoying this. It isn't necessarily anything super interesting, you know, outside of what we've already had, but it is always fun to try and kind of brainstorm new ideas with these things and figure out new ways to beat these new modes. So I do like this mode. I think that it's in a okay spot. I think that the rewards could be kind of built upon. Now, the rewards right now, we've talked about this. Some people have said that they hate the rewards. Me personally, I don't necessarily hate the rewards at all. I just wish that they would take some of this stuff out of here. So like, you can keep the hammers and things, but I don't think we really need these here. And I don't think we need this in here. I think we could just keep it to the boxes having just the star and the moonstones, even just take out these silver ones. I just want less stuff in here that could spoil your pulls, because honestly, I don't know. As you go, of course, this is going to be something that, you know, will definitely have its benefits over time. I just feel like most of the time people are going to open these boxes and not get anything they really necessarily would want, or at least not anything they're really looking for. So that would be kind of something maybe they could tinker with, but I don't think it's necessarily the worst prize pool in the world. Some people seem to hate it, but I don't have any major problems with it. I'm just very happy that we have this, and I think that this definitely could bode well going forward the rest of the year. Now, when it comes to the characters with this banner, there is something I want to talk about as it pertains to the future of the game, and that's going to be, well, was Netmarble going to kind of cap off the power creep going into 2022, or were they going to continue to kind of ramp it up? And I would say that this banner, these characters are pretty much in line with what we've seen as far as like just the top tier, especially Terry. Terry is an uber tier character. He is one of the best characters in the game. He might be the best red in the game. You know, people have been asking, is he better than Saul Bad Guy, and so on and so forth, and I would say probably. At this point, this character is just absolutely absurdly good. So in general, I think the power creep, it's going to have to be one of those things where we take the wait and see approach on kind of how much they're going to ramp it up over time, this going into 2022 rather. Mainly because with this one, I'm seeing this as more as in line with what we've had. So that's kind of where I'm at with things. Maybe Terry's a touch above some of the Ubers, but you know, at the same time, I don't like to get into the minutia when we're talking small change or small upgrades, incremental upgrades over other characters. You know, of course, he is probably, like I said, the best red in the game right now, and that's a big deal considering some of the reds like Saul Bad Guy are absurdly good. But, you know, at the same time, I don't think that they're going to stop the power creep. I would just like to see them slow it down. If they could just keep releasing these banners kind of around the same power level going forward for the next several months, I don't think anybody would complain. But at the same time, these characters were super solid, and again, we've talked about the tickets and things like that. I think that that's in a positive place. So in general, I think we're probably in for more of the same with these banners going forward into 2022, but I don't think that any of us really expected anything less. So, you know, it's just one of those things where Netmarble gonna Netmarble. So speaking of Netmarble gonna Netmarble, one other thing I want to talk about here, we touched on this yesterday, is when it comes down to these subscription packages. So when it comes to the subscription packages, we talked about yesterday how they took away the $10 package and had replaced it with basically the $7.99 one, which is not a fair trade-off in any way, shape, or form. We talked about this yesterday and broke that down more in depth. You know, this is one thing that I hope that they change. This is one thing I don't think bodes well because, honestly, somebody had pointed out in the comments yesterday and I had touched on it in that video, but I do think that a lot of Dolphins really depended upon that $10 package, and while Dolphins can still pick up the same amount or more technically if they want to do this 2 times in a month, it's still not an even trade, and we broke that down yesterday, so I'm not going to go more into that today. But, you know, I do think and I do feel for the Dolphins out there with this decision, because I personally always pick this up myself, so I definitely know the value that was there. So it's unfortunate. I hope they go back to it. I hope they change it back or do something to adjust here. I had kind of made a few propositions on what they could do in yesterday's video as pertains to that. But that is one little negative here. That's one thing that I do think that some people may not ever notice, but there's a lot of people out there that do. And so I do feel for people like that. I'm one of those people that really like that package. So there's a lot that comes with that, but I do think that they need to look at that more. But in general, you guys, as far as the rest of this stuff goes, another thing that you might want to notice here is we have been seeing, and I touched on this months ago, or not maybe even months ago, maybe just a month or 2 ago. But I talked about a while back, especially I know for a fact, I talked about it with that latest BS set, about how when it comes to these types of card sets, while at the time when that last BS set came out, it wasn't necessarily the most useful thing in the world for a lot of characters, I had said that it could be something that very soon we could see become very important, or this type of card effect become very important. And one thing that we've noticed with this latest Guild Raid dungeon that we just got is the fact that Explosion is a big deal for that game mode. You're seeing characters such as Saul Bad Guy, Shizuru, Ino, Dizzy, all these different characters being very popular there. And while that's not mutually exclusive, all those characters are not mutually exclusive to this topic in particular, one of the things that a lot of those characters do have in common is a lot of them have Explosion. And Explosion is very important in that mode for that boss, as well as some of these new cards being very good for Explosion. So that is something to track going into 2022. I think that there is probably going to be more of a penchant put on spammable Explosion, and maybe even some of these cards helping exploit the damage. So that is something to kind of track going into 2022, because I do think that that could become a trend as we go forward. So just kind of keep that in mind, put it in the back pocket, take it for what you will, but I do think that it could be and end up being something that we need to kind of pay attention to. But in general, you guys, I think that overall with this update was really positive. I think that they delivered a lot of stuff a lot of us really wanted. You know, of course, it isn't going to be everything everybody wants. You can't please everyone, like I said earlier. But I think the majority are very pleased with this update and very happy, especially with these characters. So in general, going into 2022, I think that if this update is an indicator of things to come, then we could be in for a pretty positive year with these updates, hopefully. by comparison at least to previous years. So you guys let me know in the comment section down below what you think about all this. Is there anything that you noticed that you would like to see continue in 2022 that might be different from our normal, or is there anything that you don't want to see continue? Let me know in the comment section down below, because everybody's going to have a differing opinion on this. I hope you guys found this informative and enjoyable. I hope you guys enjoy your weekends. If you haven't already done so, smash that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.
Continue.